Architecture is part of life. It's not a thing in itself. And I think that you have to think about what you believe life is, to think about how do you think you should live in it. I think we concentrated very much on the realization through material and this idea of precast facade. I think it's a very modest building from its formal aspirations, its tall boxy tower, and we tried to get out of that a sort of sense of substance through the way we built it. We tried to think about what we could do in terms of the surface and whether we could create some modest depth in the facade, and whether we could create a building that was more in keeping with a sort of earlier generation of New York buildings, which were essentially masonry buildings. They sort of don't build them like that anymore, sort of thing. The decision to be an architect was really motivated by my art teacher. My first real commission was a fashion store for Issey Miyake. You know, a typical project, a large-scale project is 4 or 5 years. A shop is 4 or 5 months. It brings you much closer to process. You see results much more quickly. The generation that taught me would never have considered doing something like that. We always try to think what the project gives out. What does it contribute beyond just satisfying itself? I still think as human beings we respond to the physicalness, the thingness of the experience of architecture. There is a sort of purpose behind it. It's not just a matter of indulgence. You're trying to make sense of these two things. These are the two things that all architects are trying to get into balance. If you're only interested in societal issues, you might have an interesting idea, but it doesn't actually materialize itself. And on the other hand, if you're only interested in staircases and handrails and a nice floor, what's that about? So it's our moral duty as architects to consider not only what the client tells us to do, but what we believe is a contribution to the city.